And no one's ever heard of this podcast outlet that she's going to. As far as I could tell, they've got far lefties like Sarah Silverman and Samantha Bee, who are loathed by everybody who is center or right of center.
Megyn Kelly, former Fox News anchor turned independent podcaster, has sharply criticized Meghan Markle's latest projects.
So this is what she's signing up for. She's declaring she's not just liberal or progressive, she's a far left progressive. Those are her new partners.
In a recent segment, Kelly labeled Meghan's Confessions of a Female Founder podcast and Netflix series fake, scripted, and cringe.
She's a diva, which some of us have known and have been talking about, and how people can't handle working for her. How, okay, I want to get the quote. Let's see.
Igniting a fierce media storm. Below is a chapter-by-chapter breakdown of Kelly's takedown sharp, direct, and dripping with sarcasm.
She's allegedly wearing no makeup. Meanwhile, she's got like the perfect blowout, you know, and like she's completely camera ready, except she didn't put eye makeup on. And she also is pretending that she's crying.
Megyn Kelly slams Meghan Markle's podcast as fake and scripted. Kelly discussed a well-known excerpt from Confessions of a Female Founder on her show, charging Meghan with employing extensive editing to create a polished, unreachable image. Kelly highlighted how so staged the section felt, implying that Meghan is more of an actor than an entrepreneur. Meticulous with every move and word, Meghan's attempts to appear vulnerable were further mocked by Kelly, who claimed that it sounded like a script reading with emotion. She maintained that instead of delivering authentic stories, Meghan was reciting carefully chosen passages to project an air of business acumen, a strategy Kelly felt was untrue. Kelly said that the podcast missed real insight and authenticity, citing unfavorable reviews from publications including The Telegraph and The Guardian. The reviews called the broadcast stomach-turning and an inane stream of mindless aphorisms, which Kelly reiterated to energize her podcast listeners. She's not real. Megyn Kelly wasn't holding back when she criticized Meghan Markle's podcast delivery. She made fun of her tone, intonation, and what she called an overly polished, overly breathy version of someone trying to sound enlightened, in addition to the topic. Kelly mimicked Meghan's voice on her program, making her audience laugh as she exaggerated what she described as Meghan's phony calm and deep emotional breath pauses. Kelly said she's not real, and that it's like witnessing someone play weak without ever being vulnerable themselves. Kelly claims that rather than sharing her tale, Meghan is manipulating the narrative to win people over and distance herself from anything untidy or genuinely intimate. According to Kelly, this overly manicured appearance alienated rather than empowered. Online, the criticism gathered traction as many on Reddit and Twitter echoed Kelly's opinions. With hundreds of upvotes, a Reddit post with the headline, "Meghan's podcast sounds like AI wrote it," went viral. Meghan's admirers acknowledged that the tone might occasionally come across as too carefully managed. Meghan's public presence is so packaged that it almost seems inauthentic a brand, not a person. And Kelly utilized this to emphasize her main argument. Megyn Kelly reacts to Meghan's claim she was called crazy. Meghan Markle's tearful assertion that she was called crazy while she was a royal was one of the most talked about parts of her podcast. In an attempt to elicit sympathy and discussion about women being unfairly gaslit, she implied that this phrase was being used as a weapon to minimize her feelings and mental health issues. Megyn Kelly, however, didn't believe it. Kelly stated simply on her program, she wasn't called crazy, she was called difficult. Being emotionally overwhelmed is not the same as being domineering, manipulative, and entitled, and Meghan Markle's detractors weren't pointing to her mental health, they were pointing to her actions. Megyn, according to Kelly, was rewriting history to support a comfortable victim narrative. Kelly questioned Meghan's disclosure's timing as well, pointing out that these kinds of allegations sometimes arise when a new project or appearance, whether it be a documentary, book, or podcast, is in progress. Kelly said, "It's always the same playbook. Drop a dramatic story, pretend to be upset, and then switch to the introduction of a new product." She is employing pain as a promotional tactic, This criticism struck a chord with certain members of the public who believe Meghan's material increasingly blurs the boundaries between authenticity and public relations. Many joined Kelly in denouncing the episode as deceptive and part of a larger trend of employing selective storytelling to sway public opinion, even as some applauded Meghan for talking about emotional wellness. Podcast or performance? Kelly questions Meghan's authenticity. In this episode, Megyn Kelly got right to the core of her long-standing criticism of Meghan Markle's allegedly too controlled image. Is this a podcast or a performance? Kelly claims that Meghan's tone, delivery, and narrative structure resemble a staged drama rather than an unscripted discussion. Kelly described it as like she's reading from a teleprompter in her living room, but she wants us to believe it's genuine. Kelly focused on how Meghan frequently brings up topics like gender, mental health, and self-worth before reversing the conversation to focus on herself. Kelly said, she invites a guest, says she wants to learn from them, and then focuses the story on her trauma. That is a monologue, not a discussion. Kelly contended that this is a part of a broader pattern in which Meghan is attempting to manage every aspect of her public persona, sometimes at the price of sincere communication. Critics and listeners agreed with this statement. The podcast is described as overproduced and overscripted in reviews found on websites such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It was described as audio narcissism dressed as empowerment in one especially scathing review from the Daily Mail. Kelly utilized these critiques to make a more general point. Meghan has to stop acting and start talking like a genuine person if she wants to be respected as a thought leader. Kelly breaks down Meghan's most awkward lines. Megyn Kelly didn't confine herself to broad criticism. Instead, she publicly analyzed Meghan Markle's podcast, line by word, focusing on the most uncomfortable and embarrassing passages. Meghan characterized herself as a little girl with big dreams who dared to ask, "Why not me?" in one particularly memorable moment. A Hallmark movie monologue trying to pass for a personal revelation, said Kelly, rolling her eyes. Meghan's use of terms like reclaiming narrative spaces and emotional anchoring, which Kelly characterized as buzzword salad, was another instance that sparked criticism. She maintained that the wording sounded forced, as if Meghan had swallowed a self-help thesaurus and never recovered. As Kelly read back some of Meghan's more polished sentences, the listeners on her podcast burst out laughing, teasing how they sounded out of step with everyday human speech. Kelly also emphasized the discrepancy between Meghan's real meaning and her wording. Kelly remarked, "She's trying so hard to sound wise, but it comes off as performance art. You simply need to be relatable. You don't have to proclaim that you are." Sadly, Meghan still hasn't found it out. Users referred to the podcast as a masterclass in unintentional comedy after the episode went popular on YouTube and X, previously Twitter. Kelly claimed that Meghan's tone and delivery caused a barrier rather than a connection with the audience. She claimed that although each episode aims to be thought-provoking, it ultimately sounds like someone attempting to create TED Talks for Instagram. Not only were these embarrassing moments for Kelly, but they also demonstrated that the podcast isn't as genuine as it seems to be. Megyn Kelly says Meghan's podcast is all about me, me, me. In one of her harshest attacks, Megyn Kelly charged that Meghan Markle was using her podcast as a self-serving therapy session, in which every topic, guest, and headline revolves about Meghan. Archetypes aren't the point, Kelly stated. It has to do with Meghan's archetype. The royal who was misinterpreted, the undervalued lady, the perfect victim. Kelly showed a number of scenes from Meghan's shows in which the Duchess cuts guests off or reroutes their tales to fit her own. Kelly noted that even when interviewing well-known women with very different lifestyles, Meghan always returns the topic to her personal complaints, whether they be about ambition, parenthood, or media attention. "That happened to me too," is the constant response, Kelly added. Meghan's origin story is repeated in every episode. Both listeners and professional media commentators have echoed this opinion. The podcast's storyline is nonetheless Meghan-centric, despite its claims to showcase other viewpoints, according to reviews from publications including The Independent and New York Magazine. Kelly highlighted this discrepancy by stating, "She's trying to control every angle of her image, but what comes through is ego instead of empathy. You don't need a podcast to tell people you're a good person," Kelly said in a scathing evaluation. "You simply put in the effort and let it do the talking." Meghan, though, one standing ovation for each line is what she wants. This struck a chord with many of Kelly's audience members. The criticism resonated not only with Meghan's detractors, but also with her erstwhile admirers who believe the Duchess prioritizes her reputation over her relationships. Kelly roasts Meghan's Archetypes episode. Megyn Kelly reserved some of her harshest criticism for Meghan Markle's Archetypes podcast, in which Meghan tried to dispel the myths about women that are perpetuated in the media and in society at large. Kelly claimed that the irony was unbelievable. She asserted, "You cannot be critical of stereotypes while at the same time presenting your audience with a pristine, brand-safe version of yourself each episode." It's a joke, a very expensive, well-made joke. Kelly said that rather than dispelling preconceptions, Meghan appeared to reinforce them, particularly the ones about her being too sensitive, fixated on the spotlight, and quick to blame others. Kelly remarked, "She's not Oprah, but she's trying to be Oprah." Oprah is able to sit down and engage in meaningful dialogue. Meghan does one. Kelly questioned the archetypes structure, saying it was more about controlling optics than it was about questioning ideas. During Kelly's roast, Meghan's statement that she was not just breaking the mold but melting it became a focal point. "What even does that mean?" Kelly inquired. "It sounds like a vision board entry from a freshman in college." Instagram quote-level insights and bumper sticker feminism abound throughout the program, she continued. But they never really go deep. Fans of Kelly's show expressed their agreement on social media. While some posted snippets of the Archetypes episode with caustic comments and laughing emojis, others said, "Meghan said what we were all thinking." For Kelly, the lesson was straightforward. Talking about oneself for 40 minutes doesn't break preconceptions. You accomplish this via learning, interacting, and listening. That is still a mystery to Meghan. Megyn Kelly compares Meghan's podcast to a therapy session gone wrong. Megyn Kelly likened Meghan Markle's podcast to a therapy session, but the kind where the therapist never gets to talk, in a clip that went viral on the internet. Kelly clarified that rather than having genuine conversations with her guests, it seems like Meghan is resolving personal issues in each episode. Kelly stated that you shouldn't leave a podcast knowing less about the guest than when you began. However, with Meghan, each tale becomes a new chapter in her emotional memoirs. Kelly pointed out that Meghan frequently starts her interviews with a thought-provoking subject, such as ambition or motherhood, but then swiftly switches to her narrating her difficulties with the royal family, the media, or public expectations. Kelly said, "It's therapeutic, sure, but only for Meghan. It's more like Meghan's hour and less like Archetypes. While therapy is necessary," she continued, "it is deceptive at best and exploitative at worst to broadcast personal issues under the pretense of empowerment or journalism." Calling the podcast narcissistic or draining, listeners have shared this sentiment. One reviewer on Apple Podcasts said, "I thought this was about women's issues, turns out it's Meghan's audio diary." Kelly highlighted how the show falls short of its goal with these criticisms. Kelly remarked, "She had a platform to uplift other women. She chose to focus on her recovery arc, in which she is consistently the misunderstood hero. The fact that Meghan dominates the debate and hardly gives others a chance to speak is more of an issue for Kelly and many of her viewers than the fact that she tells her tale. Get therapy if you want it," Kelly said, "but don't sell it to Spotify by posing it as activism." Public reacts as Kelly calls Meghan's emotions over the top. When Megyn Kelly referred to Meghan Markle's emotional delivery as over the top and dramatic, it immediately provoked discussion among social media critics and fans, as well as observers. Kelly presented video of Meghan describing vulnerable times on her program, such as her voice breaking and her lengthy, dramatic pauses. Kelly said, "She's acting sad. She's auditioning, not sharing." Sharp responses followed that comment. Kelly was commended by others for expressing what many people already believed. "Meghan nailed it," one tweet that went viral said. Meghan's feelings seem more staged than genuine. However, some chastised Kelly for being overly harsh and accused her of ignoring Meghan's mental health issues. "This isn't about mocking emotion," Kelly reiterated. "It involves pointing out the ways in which emotion is being used as a weapon to silence critics and increase brand attractiveness." According to Kelly, Meghan frequently uses emotionally charged moments as a calculated storytelling device rather than as a means of advocacy or catharsis. Kelly remarked, "Every time she's about to launch something, a lifestyle brand, a podcast, or a docuseries, suddenly there's a new tearful revelation. There is a pattern." Additionally, people are beginning to take notice. Kelly cautioned that when people see manipulation, public trust is undermined. Additionally, an increasing percentage of listeners claim that Meghan's vulnerability no longer feels natural. Rather, it feels satisfied. That's the main problem for many people. Kelly came to the conclusion, we're not asking her not to be emotional. We want her to be open about how emotion affects her ability to control her story. Megyn Kelly doubles down. America's tired of Meghan's victim act. Megyn Kelly said in a scathing concluding section, perhaps her most scathing evaluation to date. Kelly made the argument that Meghan Markle had run out of popular compassion in a tone that was both frustrated and matter-of-fact. According to Kelly, people initially gave her the benefit of the doubt. However, the incessant recounting of her agony now seems more like branding than fact. Kelly brought attention to the recurring theme she observes in Meghan's media appearances. Everyone is tinged with a new discovery, a new complaint, and yet another period of personal adversity. It's a narrative that has been carefully chosen, she said. Every time she talks, it's to protect or reclaim, not to inform. Convincing is the aim, not connecting. As evidence that the audience is moving on, Kelly cited dwindling podcast ratings, ambivalent responses to Meghan's Netflix programming, and increasing internet weariness. The timing of this remark is particularly difficult. Meghan's latest media endeavors, including her podcast, teases for the debut of her lifestyle company, and new public relations interviews are being pushed into a more cynical environment. According to Kelly, this change is due to tone deafness rather than overexposure. Kelly remarked, she continues to portray herself as an outsider opposing an unjust system. But from Montecito, it just doesn't resonate anymore with Spotify deals and multi-million-dollar contracts. Kelly's last remark, being a victim might win headlines for a while, but eventually people want a leader, not a lament, perfectly captured the attitude that many people felt. The narrative may have finally become stale for those who previously applauded Meghan's exit from the royal life. Megyn Kelly's criticism of Meghan Markle was not limited to a single podcast. Rather, it was a response to a trend. Excessively manufactured fragility, rehashed complaints, and an image that was so well manicured that it had lost all of its genuineness. Kelly revealed a developing weariness, which many listeners are now reflecting. With Meghan as a brand rather than as a person, storytelling eventually turns into spin, and people cease clapping when everything is set up for applause. The audience is able to distinguish between public trust and media polish. Whether Meghan Markle regains that trust or permanently loses it depends on her next action.